I'm going to talk a little bit about fraudulent conveyance transfers. These are entirely different than preference transfers. It's another kind of clawback, and I'll go into what fraudulent conveyance is and the basic defenses of a fraudulent conveyance. So, what is a fraudulent transfer? Again, this is my own definition. You're not going to find this anywhere. It's a simplistic definition, but I think it's helpful. A pre-bankruptcy transfer of property while the debtor is insolvent, can't pay everybody in full, which results in creditors getting less money later in the bankruptcy or no money later in the bankruptcy. So that's how I define it, and I'll give you examples of it. These are the different kinds of examples. I'll go into each one quickly. Parking assets, sweetheart deals, bad deals, Ponzi schemes, and fraudulent conspiracies. All right, parking assets. So Jim owes money to Bob and Gary. Bob and Gary come knocking at the door. Jim takes all his assets out the back door and gives them to Mary and says, Mary, will you hold on to this until these guys are gone? That's called parking assets. You're taking away your assets, taking them out of your name, taking them out of your possession. You're parking them somewhere. That's a fraudulent conveyance of your assets. It's a fraudulent conveyance to Mary in this situation. And a trustee, if a trustee is appointed in this case, then the trustee is going to sue Mary and say, the assets were transferred to you for basically no consideration, and we need them back so we can pay creditors. So that's an example of parking. Sweetheart deals. Okay, so take the same example, and this time Jim happens to like Mary and sells his Porsche to Mary for $5,000, where it's worth $75,000. So he files for bankruptcy and he's got creditors. So it's not fair to his creditors. Why is he favoring Mary? Or let's say he owed Mary $100,000, and let's say he's giving her a Porsche worth $200,000. So why is he doing a sweetheart deal with Mary? Actually, it doesn't even matter. But the fact is he is, and it's not fair to other creditors who come knocking at the door. And then when the assets are distributed, the Porsche is gone, and instead of having $200,000, which is what it's worth, they have $100,000. So there's less money to divide up, and Mary is basically being unfairly favored. So that's like a sweetheart deal. Ponzi schemes. Well, most people know what a Ponzi scheme is. Basically, there is no business. The investment by Tom invests $100,000, gets back $150K, but the $50K profit came from the next so-called investor, Bill, who invested $100,000, and so on and on and on. So it's really a fake profit because the business doesn't actually generate any profit. So that's a Ponzi scheme, and that's a fraudulent. The $50,000 is a fraudulent conveyance because it's taken from new investors. It's their money. It's somebody else's money. It's stolen money. So that's considered a fraudulent conveyance. To Tom, $50,000 to Tom is considered a fraudulent conveyance. Fraudulent conspiracy. So let's say someone is selling fake antique coins, and he gets a few friends. He gives them the coins, says, go ahead and sell this and I'll split the profit with you. And they sell to people that think the coins are real. And it's basically a fraudulent, the whole business is fraudulent. It's a fraudulent conspiracy. There's a bankruptcy, and the creditors are the people that were sold the fake coins. And a trustee is appointed, and he's going to get money back that was paid, the so-called profit that was paid to the conspirators, because it's stolen money. So that's an example of a fraudulent conveyance in context of a fraudulent enterprise. The bankruptcy code has a section on fraudulent transfer, 548, which controls But you'll often find when these cases are filed that state law, fraudulent conveyance law, is also invoked, and that can be done under Section 544 of the Bankruptcy Code. This is 548. You want to know what it looks like? Statute of limitations, typically 2 years. I'm not going to go into details. This is just a short introduction. One of the things you might want to know is that the reachback period is usually longer under state law. So in other words, bankruptcy law covers 2 years from 2 years back from the filing of a bankruptcy, but state law will often go much further back, as long as 8 years. Many states have adopted the Uniform Fraudulent Transfer Act, and that provides for a 4-year statute of limitations. So a lot of times trustees will sue under state law because they can go back further in time and recover more alleged fraudulent transfers. What you should know is there are 2 types of fraudulent transfer claims under 548. Sometimes they're combined. In other words, the trustee will allege both. Under 548, there's actual fraudulent transfer and there's constructive fraudulent transfer, and they're very, very different. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here, and I do have other videos on this, but under actual fraudulent transfer, the trustee must prove an actual intent to delay, defraud, or hinder an actual intent. Usually this is shown by badges, what we call badges of fraud, and there's sort of a laundry list, and the trustee doesn't have to show all of them. Constructive fraudulent conveyance is different. The trustee does not have to show actual intent to defraud. What his focus there is on that the debtor received less than reasonably equivalent value in exchange for the transfers. He's also got to show that there was insolvency. So it's a different analysis and a different level of proof. Well, to a constructive fraudulent claim, the defense is reasonable equivalent value, that the debtor was not insolvent, obviously. It's a double negative, that the debtor was solvent, and good faith. Okay, to wrap up the fraudulent conveyance discussion, and again, I have other videos that give a lot more detail, you're free to watch them, is jurisdiction. And there's been a lot of controversy about that over the last few years. Basically, the bankruptcy court does not have jurisdiction to render final rulings over fraudulent conveyance cases. However, the U.S. Supreme Court has decided that the bankruptcy court can acquire jurisdiction if the defendants knowingly and voluntarily consent. Jurisdiction is a very complicated issue. I just wanted to touch upon it real briefly. That basically covers very, very basic preference and fraudulent conveyance principles.